flow.
Welcome to episode 133 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. It has been a juicy week in Leafs Nation. I think you all know what we're about to discuss on this episode of the podcast. Morgan Rielly versus Ridly Greig. Was it the crime of the century? It seemed like it, according to social media. But we'll dive into it and give you our thoughts and opinions on the situation, on Rielly's suspension. Now they're appealing the suspension, so there's a lot of moving parts still. And then we're going to get into how the Leafs played against the St. Louis Blues. They responded after all of this disaster, let's call it, by maybe playing their best game of the season against St. Louis in a 4-1 victory. So we are going to get into all of that. I promise you want to stay tuned until the very end of this podcast. But now it is officially time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing today, man?
Anthony Bruno, as always, happy to be here. Very, very excited for this podcast. We do a weekly one, but sometimes there's a little bit more to talk about than other weeks, and this one could be historic, Bruno. I got a feeling this one could be a historic podcast for the Gluttons For Punishment team. Happy Valentine's Day, bro.
Oh, thank you, man. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well.
You got anything planned for your woman? Pull up the chopper, take her to Paris? What are you thinking?
Oh God, are you kidding me? No, actually, you know what we're gonna do? I'm gonna make her some crepes.
What?
Yeah, later tonight, I'm going to make some crepes. When I was a teenager, I actually worked as a dessert chef.
Okay.
Believe it or not. So I got a few skills. I'm not the greatest, but I got a few skills.
Like in an actual restaurant, you were a dessert chef?
No, I used to work at Dimitri's, if anyone knows that restaurant. I used to make like crepes and waffles when I was a teenager. So anyway, I'm going to put those skills to use.
And we're talking about
years later.
We're talking about dessert crepes.
Yeah. So you can put like ice cream, Nutella.
Yeah, we're so Italian.
Fruits,
Nutella.
Little icing sugar on top. You know how it is.
Wow, strawberries, all that stuff. Check this out, man. My wife and my daughter got me this hat for Valentine's Day. Campbell
look
Conference.
At that, That's
lid.
sweet.
Yeah, for all you kiddos out there, the Western Conference used to be called the Campbell Conference. And the East was called the Wales Conference. So, when the All-Star game used to matter, man. I remember people used to keep track of records, and they used to call penalties in it back when it was East versus West. And this one here matches 1983, the year Wayne Gretzky scored 4 goals in 1 period. And it hasn't been done since. So awesome gift from the wife and baby on Valentine's Day. My daughter's first Valentine's Day.
Love it, man. That's a sweet hat.
Yeah,
I actually am really jealous. I really want that hat right now.
Get the Wales one, man. We'll be like burners.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe you can send it to me for a Valentine's gift.
Anthony Bruno Valentine's Day gift. Love you, man.
Oh, I love you too, Lepore, but enough of gushing over each other. It's now time to get into the serious conversation.
Fuck me.
Morgan Rielly versus Ridly Greig. So for people who follow me on social media, like my personal accounts, you probably know that I posted a video on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. It went pretty viral. Like it has like hundreds of thousands of views, and I was getting attacked from every angle of the internet. I mostly just laugh at some of the comments at this point because it's pretty comical. But I will save my take because I think if people have watched that, you obviously know my take on the situation, at least to a certain degree. But what's interesting about this is that Michael Lepore, Mr. Boots on the ground in Ottawa, Ontario, was actually at the Leafs Senators game when this whole thing went down. When Ridly Greig came flying down the ice, decided to take a clap bomb into the empty net from 5 feet away. Morgan Rielly said, "Fuck this. I do not want anyone disrespecting this team." The Leafs obviously have a reputation as one of the softest teams in the league. If they let that go, they would have heard it for a long time. So Rielly said, enough of this bullshit, took matters into his own hands, obviously took things a little bit too far, got a 5-game suspension from the joke of a Department of Player Safety from the NHL, because I don't know if they have any idea what's going on. And I'll dive more into that with some examples that we can compare this to. But anyway, Lepore, I want to get your perspective first, because you were actually in the building when this went down.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, Anthony Bruno, the two fan bases were just so respectful and polite to one another before the game, during the game, and after this incident happened that people are still talking about. But this is a good one, man, because people debate about things in hockey all day long. You know, which team is better, which player is better, which era was better. Who knows? Who's going to win the Stanley Cup? You talk about stuff. And this is one of those topics where opinions come from so many directions because it's based on experience, it's based on your age, it's based on what you grew up with, it's based on what side you're on. And I think at the end of the day here, okay, and I hate to be all logical and rational about it, but people sometimes forget that multiple things can be true. Should Ridly Greig have done that? No, he should not have done that. Did Morgan Rielly have a right to confront him about it? Yes, he did. Should Morgan Rielly have cross-checked Ridly Greig in the face? No, he shouldn't have. And if you want to talk about the suspension itself, you have to talk about the act. Okay, the act, Mo shouldn't have done it. So he's going to get suspended. To me, that's not even worth a talk. These people, like, on both sides of that argument, like, I don't understand what the point of talking about that is. The suspension itself. Mo deserved a suspension. Okay. The issue at hand here is what Ridly Greig did and the confrontation Rielly put forward. See, in my eyes, it's funny because, like, I think hockey, more than any other sport, has changed in the way that what's acceptable. And I think it is just totally a generational contrast from one era to another. What I mean by that is, here you have Ridly Greig, a kid. Okay, he's a young player in the NHL. Morgan Rielly, he's a vet. He's been around a while. Okay. The way Morgan Rielly grew up with the sport, that was not okay. That was genuinely not okay. You do not do that. In Ridly Greig's world, and I'd love to put him on the truth serum, if when he did it, was it even, like, did he think nothing of it? Because he wouldn't think anyone would confront him for that.
He's a complete idiot if he thinks that he wasn't going to get confronted after doing something like that.
But see, that's where I'm kind of in the middle, Bruno, because I see this stuff. Like, everyone who listens to the show knows I coach my my nephew's team. I'm around minor hockey a lot, and there are certain things that are just kind of like accepted and nobody cares about now. And I'll give you an example, Bruno. Here you have these kids. It's competitive hockey. Some of these kids are really skilled. Kids try the Michigan all the time. All the time. Okay.
Like, do you see it more in practice, Lepore, or
games,
kids
Bruno.
Actually trying this stuff in games? Like the kids
kid on the
coaching.
We had a game last night, and a kid on the other team tried it. And it's not that shocking when a kid does it. And my nephew, okay, like any kid, he practices it. You know, he does it at the outdoor rink. And the kid tried it, and he looked to me and said, "Can I do it?" And I said, "No fucking chance you're doing that." Because it's the way I grew up is you're going to get punched in the face if you showboat like that. And people can judge that all day long. Okay. You can say that was wrong and the current way is better, but I'll give you an example that, like, blew my mind. It was last week. Spittin' Chicklets posted it. There was this kid, high school hockey in New Jersey. Okay. Goes down the wing. He snipes one. Great shot. Pops the water bottle off. The goalie's water bottle off. It goes on the ice. He picks it up, drinks out of it, and throws it down. And he got a penalty. With the hockey I grew up with, you would have been decapitated if you did something like that.
That is a major no. My goodness.
And Bruno, the other team didn't even flinch. It was like, no. And the ref took him to the penalty box, and it was nothing. Again, I guess I sound like an old person, like I always say. That would have been like a bench clearing brawl. But if you go 20, 30 years ago with hockey, and things are different. Okay. And that's not me necessarily defending Ridly Greig for what he did. I still think it was bullshit, but I just think the issue here is there's a generational change in the sport, and you have two players of two different ages from two different times. And it's funny because when they were asking players, like I know they're players on the Sens, but they're, whatever. And I genuinely think, man, I think there's a legit chance that Ridly Greig kind of thought nothing of it. He didn't even do it as like a fuck you. He just did it because he was excited and he did it and he thought like, boom, I'm going to hit home a slapper. But then when Rielly approached him, I think he was kind of like, I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, what's happening? Like he didn't expect that response. Cause I mean, that's kind of a talking point here. It's like, well, if he knew what he was doing, he would have fully expected a response. And I don't think he was, man. And again, I'm not defending him. I just think that's the issue here. And that's why this debate has gone so crazy on Twitter, because you have people of all ages, like little kids are like, what's wrong with that? Whereas you have, your uncle saying that's fucking horseshit. You do not do that. Man, I remember watching games where like stuff would start before the game. If one team went over the other team's, like went over the red line to the other team's side, little things like that. Like, no, you do not do that. These unwritten rules, and I hate to use a cheesy word like code, but these things existed. And I think that's why people are so engaged in this, and both sides don't get it. The older generation doesn't get how these kids cannot understand it. And the kids are like, what's the problem? Right. But one thing I will say, and then I'll get your take, Bruno. It's what's driving me nuts on the side of Ridly Greig. And this has to do with my point of the generational gap. Okay. As soon as it went to the panel, so I watched the game the next morning on TV because I wanted to see the telecast. And as soon as it went to the panel after the game, you had the former players, like you had Bieksa there, and they were like, no, you do not do that. Referring to Ridly Greig. They weren't condoning what Rielly did, but they were quick to make the point that you do not do that. Okay. So if you're on the side of there's nothing wrong with it, no, open your eyes, because the people who have this opinion, and there are people in the game, both in the way of media and former players, who have voiced that opinion. It didn't just get magically created in the last 72 hours. It exists. That thought process exists. So that's the most frustrating part to me on that end of it. How do you not get that there is a group of people who have this opinion? And even if you didn't know about it, how are you not seeing that now? Like you see Kevin Bieksa, a former player, on TV saying, no, that's horseshit. You do not shoot a puck into an empty net. And then say, oh, well, no, there's nothing wrong with it. Well, no, there's a guy who played in the NHL who his opinion does matter. He's on TV, who has that opinion. Well, then people have that opinion. He didn't just decide to have this opinion when he saw what Ridly Greig did. So on both sides, there's a lot of stuff that frustrates me, but that's the one that I find probably the most annoying of all.
It's time for a quick break for a word from Manscaped. It's a quick New Year's resolution check-in. Gentlemen, have you been doing everything in your power so far in 2024 to look good, feel good, and play good? Ask yourself that, because if you haven't, then you need to pick up Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This thing is an absolute beast. It'll have you looking your best, and we have an exclusive offer just for you. Use our code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. I promise you will not be disappointed.
Guys, have pride in yourself. Use products that make you, like Bruno said, look good, feel good, play good. The Lawnmower 5.0 is just the tool you need to look and feel and play absolutely fantastic. Head over to manscaped.com, promo code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is incredible, but there's so many other products that I promise will help you look good and feel your best. Just check them all out at manscaped.com using our exclusive code GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping. So that's GFP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. It's time for an important message from BetterHelp, a sponsor of today's episode. Sometimes in life, we go through difficult times, whether that's personally, whether that's in a relationship, and your mental health cannot be ignored. And a lot of times, you can't tackle these situations by yourself. You need help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. They make therapy easier and much less intimidating for a lot of people. BetterHelp lets you have therapy sessions as a phone call, video chat, or even messaging, whatever is most comfortable for you. BetterHelp will connect you with one of 30,000 therapists in their network, and in most cases, you'll be connected with a therapist within 48 hours. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy. Lepore, this service is incredible.
It is incredible, Anthony Bruno. Mental health is something that's very serious, and be aware, if you're going through a dark time, you do not have to try to beat this thing alone. There are services out there that can provide you with some great help. BetterHelp is number one when it comes to that. As Bruno mentioned, there are different ways you can get in touch with people, different ways you can contact people. It's all up to you. Go to betterhelp.com/GFP.
Join 4 million people who have used BetterHelp to live healthier and happier lives. So go to betterhelp.com/GFP for 10% off your first month of therapy to connect with a therapist and see if BetterHelp is right for you. I have a lot to say about this because I think it's really interesting, the point that you made about the generational divide and how it seems like the younger generation doesn't have an issue with it, but the older generation does, and they understand the code. I know a lot of people hate that word, the unwritten rules of hockey, but just based on the hundreds of comments that I got, it wasn't just young kids. Like, it was older people as well telling me, like, Morgan Rielly's soft. If you don't want that to happen, then why don't you beat the Ottawa Senators? And just making comments like that.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, if you don't understand the issue with what Ridly Greig did, you've never played hockey in your life. Number one.
I was going to say, Bruno, if you genuinely think that, he did nothing wrong, this is going to sound so arrogant, but your opinion doesn't matter because you clearly have no idea what you're talking about. That's nothing. Come on. You're not even a hockey fan.
There were so many comments I saw. I was just shaking my head. And a lot of people were comparing it to the bat flip in baseball. I don't even think the situations are comparable. Sure, they're both showboating to a certain degree, but in baseball, if you hit a home run, like that's during the game, right? You're in the middle of the game, you hit a home run, you hit a 450-foot home run, you're pimping it.
Right.
I get it. It's a little bit of showboating, but here we have a situation where the Senators had the lead. There was 7 seconds left on the clock, clear-cut breakaway on an empty net. And instead of just tucking it in and minding his business, a rookie, let's not forget, this is a rookie. This is not a 5-year veteran, a 10-year veteran, a 3-year veteran. This is a rookie in a rivalry game. Leafs Senators, with all the history between these teams, decides, I am going to wind up and pretend that I'm in the skills competition right now and pound this puck into the net. Ridly Greig, if he did that and genuinely thought that he wouldn't get a reaction, then he's a complete moron. Because you're telling me he didn't hear Morgan Rielly yelling at him when that happened, when Rielly was skating towards him? You don't think he heard the Leafs bench yelling at him when that happened? He knew exactly what was coming for him. That's at least my opinion on that. But it just frustrates me so much. Some of the comparisons that people have tried to make in this situation that just don't make any sense whatsoever. People are like, Morgan Rielly's so soft. Leaf fans are so soft. The most frustrating thing of all, I think, is the inability of so many people and hockey fans. I don't even know how many of these people commenting on the situation are actually hockey fans, or they're just trolls and want to get involved. But it's the complete inability, Lepore, to use critical thinking to understand that if this situation played out in any of the 31 other buildings in the NHL, the exact same response would have happened. You are telling me that if this happened against the Boston Bruins, that Brad Marchand or someone else on that team wouldn't have lost their shit?
A great take I heard was how would have Brady Tkachuk reacted to that?
Oh, if that happened against the Senators, you're telling me Brady Tkachuk wouldn't have lost his shit? Same with his brother Matthew. Go down the list of any building in the NHL. If that happens in any building across the sport, there is a reaction. Now, I promise you that. And Evander Kane was asked about it. He said that Morgan Rielly did the right thing. he would have responded as well. Braden Shen, another veteran player, was asked about it. He said Morgan Rielly did the right thing. He also probably would have responded in the same way. Again, am I saying that every single player would have went to Ridly Greig and cross-checked him and got their stick up in his face? Listen, Rielly obviously let things get a little bit too far. He shouldn't have gotten his stick that high, and it was unfortunate. I don't think he went over there thinking, I'm going to cross-check this guy straight in the head. You know, you can kind of see, and again, I don't want to completely defend Rielly and what he did, but the stick obviously rides up a little bit and it catches him in the head. It is what it is, right? We've seen this happen countless times. Just even think about the Leafs. Think about how many times like Austin Matthews has gotten cross-checked in the back. How many times, like even the Matthews cross-check on Dahlin, which I actually thought was worse when he cross-checked him right in the neck and only got a 2-game suspension.
He got him good,
When Joel Edmondson cross-checked Wayne Simmons right in the face.
That one.
Habs Leafs in the bubble.
Yeah.
There was nothing that came out of that, but there's been, I mean, cross-checking happens every night in the NHL, whether it's in the back, whether it's in the face. Now, Rielly took things a little bit too far, but I completely stand by his response, because if he stood there and did nothing about it, if the Leafs stood there and let that shit happen, let a rookie in a rivalry game who's been in the NHL for 5 fucking minutes, if they let that guy get away with that, this team would not hear the end of it. Yeah. So again, it is the complete lack of critical thinking from hockey fans to not sit there and think for 3 seconds of how any other fucking team in the league would have reacted to that exact same situation. Think about your favorite team right now in the NHL. Think about the Tampa Bay Lightning. You're telling me Steven Stamkos and that leadership group wouldn't have responded to a rookie doing that? Are you kidding me? So I don't want to hear these ridiculous takes. Morgan Rielly's so soft. He's a grown man and he can't take a guy shooting a slap shot into the empty net. Use your head for 3 seconds. That's all I ask.
Like I said,
use your head for 3 seconds. And I think what's happening here is that it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. Everyone hates the Leafs. They are universally hated. This hatred has run deep for many, many years, and it is what it is. But separate yourself from that for a second. And again, think about how your favorite team, how any other team in the league would have reacted to that exact same situation.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to put it, Bruno. You mentioned the bat flip thing. What I would have responded to that is no. And I'm sure they were thinking of like the Batista bat flip. No, the equivalent would be you're up by 5 runs in the top of the 9th and you do a bat flip. Well, no, now you're asking to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And I will say, Ridly Greig, I'll give him props because when he was interviewed, he did say, I don't think he meant to cross-check me in the face. He's like, I'm sure, like he came in, he's like, I don't think anyone really means to cross-check anyone in the face. So good on him for at least doing that. The take of, just don't let them score on you.
It's pathetic.
And I saw PK Subban make that point. I forget what podcast he was on. He's like, then just don't get scored on. Okay, so PK, every goal I score, I'm going to do a moonwalk into a backflip and cartwheel. Don't get scored on. So that's okay, PK. Like,
maybe the most pathetic take I've heard. Those are people who do not have a single hockey brain in their head. Maybe not even a single brain cell period in their head, if that's what they're thinking. Don't let them score on you. So whatsoever. Well, like when you have an empty net, you just never have to let anyone score on you because you have to expect them to showboat and do shit like that. Like use your fucking head for 3 seconds. I cannot stand the people that it's like Leaf fans are just getting attacked from every angle. And you know what else makes me laugh? The people who think that they're hurting my feelings by making fun of the Leafs and saying that, they haven't won a cup since 1967. Yeah. Have you seen the name of our podcast? Lepore and I make fun of ourselves on a weekly basis. We make fun of this team on a weekly basis. If you think you're hurting our feelings by calling us, salty Leaf fans and we're a brutal franchise that hasn't won shit, we don't fucking care, just so you know. Like, we literally make fun of ourselves every single episode of this podcast. So if you think you're actually getting to us by saying that stuff, we're literally laughing at you. Yeah. I can't get past the inability of hockey fans to use critical thinking in this situation. And it's because the Leafs are involved. Imagine this happened with any other team. Like if the roles were reversed here and Brady Tkachuk did that, he would be applauded for his leadership and his toughness. You know what? the stick got away from Brady Tkachuk. No big deal, but that's what the Tkachuks do.
Yeah,
That's what the Tkachuk family does. They're violent. They're aggressive. True leadership. Morgan Rielly does it. Apparently the Leafs are soft and they let guys score on their empty net. They lose to bad teams. Oh, don't lose to a bad team like Ottawa or else that wouldn't happen. Like just some of the stupidest takes I have ever heard have come out of this situation. And as much as I'm enjoying talking about this, Lepore, I also can't wait until this situation is just officially put to bed. The appeal goes through and we can all just move past this garbage, quite honestly.
It's going to be, well, we don't play them again, but I'll say this, and I'll say this about my city and the culture of my city. This isn't going anywhere for a while. Sens fans are loving every minute of this. Just, being in the spotlight. It has to do with the Leafs, a game where one of our best players got suspended, a game where they beat us. It's funny, though. So one of my best buds, big Sens fan, just talking normally, he asked me, he's like, do you think anyone's going to do that to us now? Say like next week or in any point during the season, someone for the Blues gets a breakaway. Are they gonna slap home the empty net?
It's possible. This would open up a can of worms, man.
Yeah, well, I'll say it, man. Next year, if the Leafs are playing the Sens, what do you? I don't know, man. And then that would open something up. I think the bigger fuck you would be the opposite. Just like the lightest of sliding it in. Even like looking to the bench and sliding it in. But it's fun. It's fun this people talk about this quote unquote rivalry. Both of these teams have not really done anything. Actually, I saw this post by a Sens account of all accounts. And it was a great take. The guy said, like, the worst part about this is Leafs fans and Sens fans going back and forth about playoff success or not making the playoffs.
Yeah, we both stink.
He's like, we both suck and neither of us have won a Stanley Cup in the modern NHL. So, and I've made that point about all Canadian teams. Like, guys, we all stink. Why are we just ripping at each other? We're all in the same boat. But it's going to be talked about for a while. As you mentioned, Mo appealed it. And if a game or two gets shaved off, the networks are hoping to God a game or two gets shaved off because that's going to open it up for everything. It was the perfect event for social media. Like, as soon as I went on Twitter, like every hockey account I follow had the video and then had like a one-liner just begging for comments. And you saw 4,000 comments, 2,000 comments, 5,000 comments, people just going nuts, right? And you said it's the Leafs. And you said before, Bruno, people using like critical thinking. Come on, man. Now you're giving credit. Now you're giving credit. We're talking about sports fans here. Critical thinking. Yeah,
there's no critical thinking that goes on.
No, Bruno. The takes
a lot of the time when you're dealing with diehard fans,
of course,
live and breathe, with everything that their team does on a daily basis.
Yeah, but spice things up a bit. Sens are on a heater. I mean, it's too little too late. And I think even
typical Senators hockey. Get off to a horrible start, go on a heater late in the season, in the spring, and miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, might as well, right? But I don't know, man. We'll see what happens with Mo and the suspension. It sounds kind of weird to ask this question because we both agree. And it's funny how it's like critical thinking. We've gone on all these takes. I'm sure people are writing in the comments about how what Rielly did was crazy, this and that. We are acknowledging that. We're not discussing. The act was the act. The act deserved a suspension. It was the lead up to the act that is up for discussion and there's debate about. But are you glad Mo did it?
Oh, I'm so glad he did it.
Oh, I don't give a fuck.
I am over the moon that he did that because, again, the Leafs are known as maybe the softest team in the NHL. And they might not be the softest team, but damn, they are right up there just based on their lack of emotion in situations like this. And again, if that went unanswered, I think the Leafs would have taken a lot of shit for that. And Morgan Rielly, okay, we're talking about a guy who's been here through thick and thin since he was drafted in 2012. He's the only guy of all the star players who took less money. He wasn't given the captaincy because, honestly, if you really think about it, he's the true captain of this hockey team. I thought that was 100% captain material what he did. I know John Tavares is the actual captain, and I know Austin Matthews is the best player on the team, but the heart and soul of this hockey team is Morgan Rielly. So I am over the moon that he responded that way. You go ask any former Leaf. Imagine you go ask Wendell Clark what he thought about what Morgan Rielly did.
Yeah.
Imagine Wendell Clark in that situation. You don't think Wendell Clark would have lost his fucking shit?
No, really,
if that happened?
Ridly Greig's career would be over, bro.
Oh my Lord. He is like lucky that didn't happen in that era. Lucky. So yeah, it's just again, it's just people not understanding that it's a no-no. Again, it's not just Leaf fans crying about this. Like, this is a big time no-no in hockey. If you've been playing hockey at any level, okay, and you don't even need to be like a pro hockey player. You don't have to be able to be looked up on Hockey DB. But if you played at like any sort of serious level, you know that shit just shouldn't fly. And Lepore, before we move on from this, there's actually, I want to shout out a member of GFP Nation who sent me a link on Facebook.
Whoa.
And he showed me a similar incident. His name is Corey Cook.
Okay.
So Corey, if you are listening or watching, shout out to you. He sent me a link of Ryan Kessler when he was a member of the Anaheim Ducks in 2015. It was Ducks versus Flames.
Yeah, I saw it.
And Kessler was coming in again, breakaway on an empty net. After the buzzer, didn't even take a slap shot, just fired the puck into the empty net. He got jumped by the entire Calgary Flames team that was on the ice. Got jumped. And again, perfect example of like, this shit just doesn't fly. This is not just the Leafs who react like this. Like, any building in the NHL, this would have happened. And then, you know, when you go down the list, and we could even have a separate conversation about this, about like comparable incidents. Like I mentioned like the Matthews cross check on Dowling, which I thought was worse. But you go down the list, man, like recent incidents that we can look at. And I won't take too long on this, but 2023, Blake Lizotte cross checks Josh Morrissey in the face, 1-game suspension. Also this season, the Blake Lizotte thing was last season. Jacob Trouba in November of this season took a baseball swing with his stick at Trent Frederick's head, and it resulted in a $5,000 fine. Jacob Trouba, arguably the dirtiest player in hockey, the most physical player in hockey, decides that he's Jose Bautista taking baseball swings at people's heads. Again, $5,000 fine. 2021, Alex Chason, member of the Edmonton Oilers, cross-checked Jimmy Vesey of the Leafs in the head. 1-game suspension.
See, I think that one, I saw that when people were obviously posting all them. I thought that one was a good comparable because it was kind of after the play. So like you can compare like old cross checks to cross checks. Well, the fact that Mose was after the play, I thought that one was the best example of, okay, that's what this is.
Yeah. But of course, Morgan Rielly, who has a clean history, has never been suspended in his career, who, you know, and again, I don't want to say Morgan Rielly's like not a physical player. Like he mixes it up. You watch that guy in the playoff Morgan Rielly is fully engaged, but he's not like a dirty player.
He's taken one minor penalty this year, Bruno.
Player. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go, right? And so for the Department of Player Safety to hand this dude 5 games, like, are you fucking kidding me? After some of the other shit that we've seen, that's what's crazy to me, is just the inconsistency. It's not, oh, Leaf fans are crying again. They're crying about the fines and the suspensions handed out to their team. No, like, this is complete inconsistency across the board. If you watch hockey, if you are following this league on a nightly, weekly, monthly basis, you know the exact examples that I've just referred to. And there's countless more examples of the Department of Player Safety not having a single fucking clue what they're doing. Yeah. Simple as that.
I made that point to someone. They asked me the next day what I thought the suspension was going to be. And I actually thought it might be worse. Like, I was preparing myself for 6 games or more. And they were like, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And if I'm being perfectly honest with myself, if someone showed me that act that Rielly did, I would say, yeah, that's a hefty suspension. That guy should get suspended for multiple games, maybe 5, 6, maybe more games. But it's what you just said, that should be the suspension, but that hasn't normally been the suspension for idiot acts. And that's the frustrating part. So I don't think many people would disagree with that. That does that act of, regardless of why and who and how, cross-checking a player in the head after an empty netter, yeah, that deserves like a hell of a suspension. But again, based on how the league has done it, it makes no sense. And I'm not saying, oh, I thought he was going to get 2 games or something like that, but I think that's where the frustration lies, and that should be all hockey fans, because like here I am saying, yeah, Mo deserved 5 games or more, totally deserved it. But I think all hockey fans would agree that we could look up other acts of violence in the National Hockey League that should have received what Mo received or more. And as hockey fans, like, let's band together and agree, because like this is the shit league we follow. And that's the most frustrating part. And we all knew, because of the attention. And I'm not going to play the, oh, it's the Leafs card so we get picked on, but it's just louder.
All right, everything is just more amplified.
Yeah, so
under a microscope, it is what it is. That's how it is when you're dealing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like another example that's been floating around the internet, Zdeno Chara, the biggest player in NHL history with the biggest stick in NHL history, cross-checked Brendan Gallagher in the throat.
Yeah,
and got absolutely nothing. So like explain to me how all of these acts, which are more or less the same that Rielly did. Again, I mean, even Matthews, the Matthews cross-check to Rasmus Dahlin, I would argue might have been more violent than what Morgan Rielly did to Ridly Greig.
But again, during the play, though, Bruno, I think
that's fair.
I think that's
the separator thing. Is that they were kind of battling in front of the net. But I don't think for 1 second Rasmus Dahlin was expecting Matthews to cross-check him in the neck.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the worst takes I saw was on that side of what Rielly did, comparing it to what Hunter did after the overtime to Turgeon. It's like, no, that was an overtime winner. There was no hot dogging there. Turgeon was just celebrating. And I think like he broke his shoulder as a result. So no, it wasn't the same thing as an empty netter and a guy showboating and the player getting frustrated. Like what Hunter did truly was ridiculous. Nobody would defend that act. And you made the point, Bruno, again, you said you would expect any team to react that way. And I think every fan base would want their team to react.
Absolutely.
Again, not cross-check a player in the head and get suspended, but you would want your team to respond. I guess that's the right word. What Hunter did, no one would agree with that. No one would say, oh, I wish after an overtime winner, my player would have went over and rode that player into the boards. No. Come on. Like no one would ever say that.
And you know, another take that I've seen, which is fair to a certain degree, people are like, well, Morgan Rielly, what he should have done is drop the gloves. But here's the thing. How about if Rielly drops the gloves? Ridly Greig wants nothing to do with that, and then Rielly sucker punches him in the face. We could be staring at the exact same situation. Yeah, Rielly dropped the gloves. Greig got sucker punched in the face. He didn't want to fight. Like, I don't know. You could be looking at a very similar situation. People talking about how Ridly Greig was blindsided when the entire Leafs bench was yelling at him, when Morgan Rielly was yelling at him, when I think he's fully aware of the bullshit that he just pulled. He knew something was going to happen. He wasn't going to skate away scot-free. Or who knows? Maybe he thought he was going to skate away scot-free, because the Leafs are typically soft in those situations. But you can't even get that shit by the Leafs, who, again, are one of the softest teams in the NHL. And I'll even admit that. For all you people who think I'm this huge Leafs homer and all I do is just praise the Leafs on a daily basis, for Christ's sake. But again, like, man, the amount of just horrific takes that I have heard to this situation has just made me truly question
humanity,
the hockey
emotion,
world,
man.
It's unreal, man. Unreal.
People will. I always find it kind of hilarious with their sports teams, how I always make the comparison to children. Like, you always hear about the parents who go into the parent-teacher meeting and they just defend their child no matter what. Like, oh, your child sucks at math. Oh, well, you're a bad teacher. Or your child talks out of turn. Well, all the kids do. You know, you're just singling him out. And some parents just have that DNA. I always find it funny because when I hear these takes, like ridiculous takes of like Homer fans of whatever team, I always think that to myself, what if someone takes a shot at your kid? Then if this is your sports team, how do you react? Or it is, no, the sports team causes a bigger reaction than their child or someone close to them. Who knows? But it's emotion, man. And when emotions involve, people are illogical. And the fandom thing really is crazy. It really is crazy. And again, takes you heard about like, oh, all the former players hated it. And then people saying, oh, did you see Chris Neal? He gave him a fist bump. You're that dumb
You
to
don't
not
think
acknowledge.
Chris Neal would have literally killed Ridly Greig if that
Number
happened?
one, number one, he again, Ridly Greig would be in the hospital if that happened against the Sens and Chris Neal's day. Number two, Chris Neal has his number in the rafters for the Ottawa Senators. Like, what was he gonna say? Oh, Greg, you idiot! Like on camera, like that's the stuff to me that drives me crazy
Yeah,
with
just
people. How they should remove
stupidity.
themselves from like logic and human behavior, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, that's what got me during this whole situation. Again, it was just the complete lack of critical thinking by everyone who's had a take on this. Everyone, honestly, if you've had one of these shitty takes, like reevaluate the way that you're thinking about this situation. And again, I'm not trying to be like condescending, but it's like, holy cow, the amount of stupidity that has come out of this. And Lepore, the amount of people being like, Rielly should have been suspended for 25 games
Yeah.
the rest of the season. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, that
We've
was the
seen,
Hunter thing. That was the Hunter argument. Like, oh, because he got, I think, 25 games or something.
we've seen a handful of incidents that were more violent than this, literally just this season. Literally just this season. And people are calling for Rielly to get suspended for 25 games. I mean, it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Anyway, is there anything else you want to get off your chest regarding this incident specifically?
No, I just think, like I said, hockey has changed, and whatever take you have, like I really do think like the opinions for the most part are generationally based. And I remember last year, and it was a big topic. Do you remember there was a game? It was who was playing? It was the Ducks and the Coyotes. Okay. And Zegras and the gang were up big, and I guess there was points where they were going by the bench and they were chirping Arizona's bench. And I forget, it escapes me. I forget which player it was for Arizona, and I forget which player on Anaheim took the beating, but he got grabbed and just pummeled, absolutely pummeled. I remember pictures. People comment down below. Bruno, do you remember who it was?
I don't remember off the top of my
Comment
head.
down below if you remember who it was. And like I remember pictures after the game of like his face black and blue, like a beating you don't normally see in a hockey fight. It was terrible. It was terrible. And here I was like listening to Spit and Chicklets that week, and Whitney said, kind of similar to like what we're saying about Rielly in the way of, should he have done that? No, he shouldn't have done that. Of course not. You shouldn't cross-check someone in the face, just like you shouldn't just grab a player and pummel him. But he did say, if you're running up the score on a team and you're chirping the bench as you go by, you have to kind of expect you're going to get a reaction. And again, a guy who used to play, like he grew up in that culture. So all of us, like whatever our opinions are, just like try to step back, try to remove fandom, try to see the other side, whatever side you're on. Because man, like I said, I really and truly think there is a chance that Ridly Greig thought he did nothing wrong. And you're calling him like a fucking idiot for maybe thinking that way. I'm just saying, honestly, like if I showed my 11-year-olds that, and like, they're 11, like they're really young, but I think even me at 11, I would have known, no, you don't do that. But these kids, I don't know. Like I said, how these kids try that. I see Michigan's every few games. Whereas remember the whole Don Cherry thing when Crosby did it in junior, and Cherry went on TV calling him a hot dog, and he shouldn't be doing that, and it like divided Canada. Everyone debated. It was like Crosby versus Cherry. It's there, man. It's just, it's so different. And another thing we can argue about or debate about is what's better. Like what do we want the game to be? But I guess it doesn't really matter because this is what it's becoming, and eventually that's going to be all the sports fans left on the planet, or all the hockey fans, I should say.
Before we move on, Lepore, I'll say I don't even think the Michigan is as bad as this. Like, at least with the Michigan, you're legitimately trying to score in the middle of the game. I can understand if you're playing like minor hockey and your team is just like 10 times better than the opponent and you're up like 7-2 and you're trying to Michigan, that's one thing. But if you're like in the heat of the battle, it's a close game and you're like, fuck it, I'm going to try the Michigan. I don't really have an issue with that. But like growing up, not even just playing hockey, if you've played any sports, like I was someone who played like a ton of sports growing up, not just hockey. Like I played everything that you could imagine. Like you are taught to not be an asshole in certain situations, to not showboat, to not do things that are completely unnecessary. And I think what Ridly Greig did fell under that category. So again, if you're one of those people who grew up playing a lot of sports, playing competitive sports, you know not to be an asshole. It's as simple as that. Whether it was your father, your mother, your coaches who taught you that, it's just like ingrained in your brain. Like there's certain things that you do, there's certain things that you're allowed to do, and then there's certain things that you can't do because you're crossing the line and you're showing up your opponents, and that's just not right for sportsmanship purposes.
But I'll ask you this, Bruno. So we both agree that what occurred deserved a response. Okay. But if you were on the other side, and let's say a Leafs player did it and got a response, like we sat here saying, you know what, we're happy Mo did it. We're not happy he cross-checked him in the face, but we're happy our team responded. On the other side, would you be happy if a Leaf player did that?
No.
And even if you got a response, almost like say we were playing the Bruins and like a fuck you, and then a melee starts and whatever, saying like, I don't know, like whatever you want to deem it as, in terms of like a category of
like imagine we saw Matthew Nyes do that, I'd be like, you know what, Matthew Nyes, I like you, but like that's a weasel move, buddy. You shouldn't be doing that. Like he's a rookie as well. Like I think that's like the perfect comparison. If Matthew Nyes just comes in and fires a clapper at an empty net from 5 feet away when the Leafs are up by like a couple of goals, I'd be like, dude, you're taking shit too far. Like at that point, you got to expect it. And you're telling me that the other guys in the Senators' room didn't understand like what Greig just did. And sure, maybe they're dapping him up in the room, like, way to get under their skin. But, there's probably some vets that came over to him and said, listen, kid, like now you put a target on your back. Like this is the National Hockey League. This isn't junior hockey. This isn't minor hockey. Like this is the fucking National Hockey League. Yeah. So sure, you can be a pest. You can try to be the next Brad Marchand, but you got to be willing to take the heat if you're gonna do shit like that.
Yeah. Another good take I heard was how would Giroux and his Flyers have reacted?
Oh,
like 10 years ago.
They would have just lost it.
Yeah.
But lost it.
Because I did hear that take, and I think maybe that was more on the side of entertainment. People saying they liked it from both sides. Saying, I'm glad Ridly Greig did that. It's a geographical rivalry. They beat them again. He can do it. And then I'm glad Rielly reacted because it shows the emotion. And that's kind of what I was getting to in asking the question. Like I saw people like happy Greig did it and happy that Mo reacted the way he did.
Yeah, like what would have your reaction been if Matthew Nyes had done the exact same thing to the Senators?
Nah, like I'd be like, yeah, that's kind of lame. It's lame. Like I wouldn't want him to do it.
Yeah,
like if I
it's just a bad look, right? It's a bad look, man.
I think it gets to a point, and again, like generational and all that. It gets to a point in whether it's a game or a series. Like I'm all for chirping, I'm all for trash talking, I'm all for whatever is gonna help you win a game. But I think there's like a hard line of when it's over. Like when it's over. So like I'll even say it. Okay. You want to chirp the bench after a goal during the game? Sure. You don't chirp the bench like as time's winding down and you're up by 4. It's like, no, it's over now. And like, I'm not saying that's like a hard opinion that I think everyone should have. That's kind of the way I've always viewed it. But I don't know. Like it's hilarious. And I think we might break a record with comments with this one.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to see.
And I hope we do.
On this episode.
We do. Yeah.
You know what else we got to talk about, Lepore? The amazing response by the Leafs, who without Morgan Rielly, without John Tavares and Mitch Marner, played one of their best games of the season in a 4-1 win over the St. Louis Blues. And it was funny because people were like chirping me on Facebook. They're like, the Leafs' #1 defenseman is out. Now they're going to miss the playoffs. And I reminded this individual in the moment that last season, the Leafs went 14-2-1 without Morgan Rielly. And all time without Morgan Rielly were 38-18-7. So they're now 39-18-7 and 15-2-1 without Rielly in the lineup over the last 2 seasons. And you know what was the most telling thing to me? that the Leafs were still going to win this game. So I checked the betting line when it was
barely
just
budged.
Rielly who was out. When
Yeah.
Marner and Tavares were still, everyone thought they were still playing. Like no one knew that they were sick. The Leafs were minus 210 on the money line. When Marner and Tavares got ruled out, the Leafs were still minus 190 on the money line with no Rielly, no Marner, no Tavares. Now, what I think it is that basically, you know, when you think about like wins above replacement, like how much does Austin Matthews, how much does Mitch Marner, how much do these great players contribute to winning? I think the way that, you know, these models and Vegas is looking at this is that missing those three guys wasn't that big of a difference.
It's not.
And I know like it's maybe a little bit of a shot more towards John Tavares and even Rielly to a certain degree. Like he's awesome on the power play. Like I love Morgan Rielly. I'm the biggest Morgan Rielly fan. But I think the guy that contributed most of that line moving was Mitch Marner, because I think he's worth a little bit more just in terms of like wins above replacement than both of those guys. And
yeah, for sure it is.
What the Leafs do, they go out and they allowed, what was it, like 15 shots on goal, something ridiculous. Like it was basically their best game of the season. So that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I thought the same thing as you. I'm like, they're gonna win for sure. Because I thought back to last season when they had all the injuries on D. And they were riding like Victor Mete and Jordy Ben. Like Sandin was playing. I think Sandin, I think, even got hurt at one point, but he was playing crazy minutes. Giordano was playing crazy minutes. But it's almost if the team, like something switched where, and it worked, something switched and they all kind of told themselves, you know what, we're fucking depleted right now. We have to play structurally 10 out of 10 A+, and they did. And they went on the heater, like you said. So I just had this theme like they're gonna win. They're gonna win. And also people hear me say it all the time, hockey makes no sense. But what an effort, man. What an effort. And BMAC, great story. A kid that was playing in the East
Bobby
Coast.
McMahon, let's go.
Yeah, man. Kid playing in the East Coast League. East Coast League. Signed with the Marlies. Like he was just like you love hearing things like again, you sometimes forget these kids who got isn't he like 27?
Yeah, he's a little bit older. He's a late bloomer, so he's not like a a spring chick. It's not like he's like 22, 23. I believe he is 27 years old.
Yeah. Does hey man, we've talked about like the top 6. Does he get a shot with Matthews and Marner?
Maybe because Matthew Nyes and Tyler Bertuzzi have not been lighting the world on fire.
Okay, we ripped Bertuzzi a new asshole, I think, during the last 2 shows about his lack of production and how disappointed we've been in his play based on the contract he received. Someone put together, like I guess call it a montage of all the opportunities he had last night, both in the way of scoring chances and even setting other people up. Like he couldn't even buy an assist.
Yeah,
like
he's been pretty snake bit.
Oh man, and I'm like, maybe are Bruno and I too hard on him? Like they kept showing him.
No, I still don't think we're too hard, but he has been pretty unlucky. I would say like compared to like a player with like a similar skill level who maybe has generated the same amount of chances, he's definitely been unlucky. But I mean, you got to find a way to produce, man.
Oh, for sure.
6 goals now in 50 games. Come on, dude. Brutal. It's brutal. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think we're too hard on Bertuzzi, Lepore.
Yeah, but I was kind of laughing at it. He set up Domi wide open in front. Binnington makes a crazy save. He sets up Robertson on another one where he delays, made the right move, slid it across. Binnington just goes post to post and saves it. So you can't even get assists, man. He had 2 breakaways, and you could tell too the ultimate sign of a guy who's frustrated. He had that breakaway, and he did a move that was so obvious that he was overthinking it. He went like forehand, backhand, and that's where you normally slide it in or put it up high. And he went back to forehand. Like he outthought himself and made one too many moves. And yeah, that's a guy who doesn't have a lot of confidence right now. Yeah, and is trying to walk it in.
Is going right for Tyler Bertuzzi. But what's your take now, like moving forward? Like, did this win against St. Louis? And I just officially looked up the stats here. The Leafs allowed 15 shots on goal.
How many?
That has to be their best effort of the season defensively.
Yeah.
Has to be. And I have to maybe look more at some of the advanced numbers, but just pure shots against. 15 shots against. Jesus. But anyway, does this show us anything about this team moving forward? Like, are you more confident now? Because we've kind of seen this in the Sheldon Keefe era. It really hasn't mattered who's in and out of the lineup. They always just find ways to win and find ways to be like a 110-point team. So I'm not too surprised by it, but this has been a rough year compared to, let's say, the last 3 or 4 seasons, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. But I don't know. Did you change your mind at all about how you view this team based on this win?
How so? You mean, oh man, we have depth?
Like, is it like, oh man, the Leafs actually might be better than we thought? We've been ripping on this team for the last little while, but then they put in a performance like this without 3 of their top 5 players.
We'll see what happens, because I mean, we're supposed to lose Mo for 5 games, and even today, Tavares and Marner were still labeled as sick, and Nylander joined as well.
Yeah, that's a blow.
So we're kind of lucky, and also I'm probably jinxing it, but they have the Ducks next? Sorry, they have the Flyers next. And then do they have the Ducks or Arizona or something? We have Arizona a couple times in the next couple weeks, but the schedule's soft, so it'll be a short sample size, whatever happens. But we will find out, like, if this team, like, if we should be impressed, because one game's one game. Anything can happen. Your goalie can play well. Guys can play out of their minds. Like, Bobby McMahon scored a hat trick, everybody. But, like, we'll see what happens. And guys get opportunities. Sometimes they step it up. I don't know. Maybe, and again, Bertuzzi, just looking at last night's game, you look at all the chances he created, he did look good. Maybe that's something this guy needs. More responsibility, and it's a kick in the ass, and it gets him motivated, and maybe he gets one and the confidence goes up. We'll see.
Yeah, because everyone's minutes were up across the board, and for the most part, the entire team responded, which was great to see. But you said it, man. The upcoming schedule is pretty soft. Flyers, Ducks, Blues, Coyotes. Although then there's 3 in a row. Vegas, Colorado, Vegas.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a test.
I chose to ignore that part of it, Bruno.
Yeah, we'll just focus on the next 4 games, all of which are winnable, even without some of their star players. So we'll see how they respond. They might completely lay an egg against the Philadelphia Flyers in the next game, because the Leafs are kind of Jekyll and Hyde, as we've come to know. But is there anything else you want to get off your chest before we wrap up this podcast?
No, it's a good one, Bruno. Like I said, we may hit the all-time record for comments on the GFP podcast, and that's no compliment to us. I just think it's the story. Everyone's got an opinion. It doesn't take much to have an opinion when something like this happens. Leaf fan or Leaf hater. Sure, more people hate our guts based on what we've put out in the last 45 minutes to an hour than ever before, which is fantastic. So comment down below about how much we suck. But I say all the time, we're going to find out who teams are. What's going on with the Leafs, man? This Mo thing, we're going to see how they react. This flu thing, we're going to see how they react. We're going to find out who this team is. We really are.
Yeah, I can't wait, man. I thought this was a great episode. I think we got a lot of thoughts out there and off our chest. And I think GFP Nation and a lot of our haters are going to have a lot to say. And again, we love when you guys comment. If you think for 1 second you're getting under my skin or Lepore's skin, I mean, we probably would have stopped the podcast like 110 episodes ago. Like, I've been in sports media for like over 10 years. So if you think you're going to insult me by telling me that I'm a Leaf crybaby, I don't even know what to tell you. Like, I'm literally just laughing at you. So again, I like seeing the comments. I like when, like, you question our opinions. You can be a jackass if you want. It doesn't really matter to me. But, I like when the comment section is like, it's more of like a constructive debate instead of like just calling everyone a piece of shit.
Yeah,
right. Like, that's
Bruno.
just stupid.
Again,
like,
you're giving people credit, man. Stop giving people credit, Bruno, especially sports fans. Come on.
Yeah, I know sports fans are emotional. What is fan short for?
Exactly.
Fanatic.
Exactly. So.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for episode 133 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you are a longtime listener or you're just listening to us for the first time and you really enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on either Apple or Spotify. It would do wonders for us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it so much if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, as we said, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. So until next time, go Leafs go. Let's go Morgan Rielly, true captain of the Leafs. And we'll see how the Leafs respond. But until then, enjoy the hockey. Enjoy all the storylines going on right now in Leafs Nation. And we will chat very, very soon.
Thanks, everyone.